I want to share a very personal story with you about the night my whole world stopped making sense. It was a night that began with a heavy quietness, but it ended in a way that I never could have seen coming. It was almost midnight, and the house felt very empty as I sat all alone in our dark living room. The TV was on, but I had pressed a button to turn off the sound. I was just sitting there, waiting in the shadows. I had this deep, heavy feeling in my chest throughout the whole evening. It felt like a warning that something was very wrong. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 25 long years. In all that time, through the good days and the hard ones, she had never stayed out this late without calling me, not even one single time in over 2 decades. Suddenly, the sound of the front door slamming shut broke the silence. I heard her high heels making a loud, scraping noise as she stumbled across the hardwood floor. She was laughing softly to herself, but it was a sound I didn't recognize. It sounded strange and out of place. Sarah was never a person who liked to drink much, and she certainly never came home walking with a wobble. I stood up from my chair very slowly. I could feel my heart beating so fast against my ribs that it almost hurt. I called out her name in a soft, gentle voice. She stopped for a second, and then turned her head to look at me. Her eyes looked very cloudy, and her makeup was smeared across her face like a sad painting. She tried her best to act like everything was perfectly normal. She even asked me why I was still awake, but she couldn't hide the truth of how she looked. I kept my voice very calm, even though I was shaking inside. I asked her where she had been all night. She quickly told me she was out having fun with some friends from work. She said it very fast, almost like she had practiced the words in her head before coming inside. That is the exact moment when I smelled it. It wasn't just a smell of party drinks. It was a sharp, spicy smell of a man's cologne. It was a scent I didn't know at all, and it definitely was not mine. In that very second, something inside of my heart just broke into pieces, but I didn't let it show on my face. I asked her which friend she had been with, but she just rolled her eyes at me. She tried to walk past me to go upstairs, saying she was just too tired to talk right now. As she moved, her phone slipped out her hand and hit the floor with a loud thud. The screen lit up right in front of my feet. I saw a message on the screen that said, "Tonight was incredible. I can't wait to see you again." My whole body went cold, like I was standing in the snow. I picked up the phone, feeling like my chest was being squeezed by a giant hand. 25 years of being loyal, of being a partner, and of building a life together felt like it was ending right there on the living room floor. I looked at her and asked very quietly, "Who is he?" Sarah went completely still, like a statue. The look of being brave and the cloudiness of the drinks disappeared instantly. She looked very, very scared. She started to whisper that she could explain everything, but I didn't want to hear any more excuses. I wanted the real story. I wanted to know the truth about the person I had shared my bed with for half of my life. Over the next 20 minutes, the real story finally came out in small, painful pieces. His name was Daniel, and he was someone she worked with every day. She told me it started with just a few friendly conversations. Then it turned into lunches away from the office. And then it became late nights. When I asked her how long this had been happening, she looked down at the floor, unable to face me, and said, 2 years. 2 years. I felt like I couldn't even pull air into my lungs. While I was working extra hours at my job to make sure our family had a nice home and everything they needed, she was living a whole second life that I knew nothing about. She had been smiling at me every single morning over coffee as if nothing was wrong. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs or throw something across the room, but I chose to be silent instead. I just sat there. That silence seemed to scare her much more than if I had been shouting and angry. It was a cold kind of silence that filled up the whole house. The next morning, Sarah woke up, and I could tell she was waiting for a giant fight. She expected me to be packed and gone. Instead, I did something she never expected in a million years. I made her favorite breakfast. I even leaned over and kissed her on the forehead, telling her that we would find a way to fix our marriage. She looked so relieved, almost happy, like a weight had been lifted. But what she didn't know was that I had made a very big choice in the middle of the night. I wasn't going to let my hurt feelings take over. I was going to make a very careful and quiet plan. For the next few weeks, I acted like the perfect, loving husband. I was kind, I was helpful around the house, and I gave her all my attention. I stopped asking her hard questions, and I stopped arguing with her, because I was being so nice. She started to feel comfortable again. She became far too comfortable and let her guard down. While she thought our relationship was getting better and stronger, I was quietly gathering every single bit of proof I could find. I took pictures of the secret messages on her phone. I kept careful records of every late-night phone call. I even found ways to record her talking on the phone late at night when she thought I was fast asleep in the other room. I went to talk to a kind lawyer, moved my savings so the money was safe, and prepared every single tiny detail. I was just waiting for the right moment to show everyone what I knew. Finally, the day of our 25th wedding anniversary arrived. Sarah had planned a big, fancy dinner party to celebrate our long marriage. She invited our family, our closest neighbors, and even some people she worked with. And yes, Daniel was there too. He sat right across the table from me, acting like he was a good friend who barely knew who I was. He sat there eating the food I paid for and talking as if he hadn't been with my wife for 2 whole years. I stayed completely calm. I smiled at our guests and acted like a happy husband all night long. Then I stood up to give a special speech. I started by telling everyone that 25 years ago, I married the person I loved most in the whole world. I held up my glass and talked about how I had given her my whole heart, my loyalty, and my entire future. Everyone in the room was smiling and clapping for us. Sarah looked like she was very touched by my sweet words, and she even had a little tear in her eye. But then I let my voice change just a little bit. I told the room that sometimes the person you trust the most is actually the one who can hurt you the most. The room went totally silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Sarah's smile just melted away from her face. I took a small remote out of my pocket and pressed a button. The big TV on the wall behind me turned on. One by one, all the messages, the secret photos, and the recordings of her voice started playing for everyone to see and hear. I heard our friends and family gasp in shock. Sarah's face went completely pale, and Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. I calmly told everyone that this was a woman I had been married to for 25 years. This was the real Sarah. Sarah started crying and begged me to turn it off, but I didn't stop. I told everyone in that room about the 2 years of lies and the 2 years of being betrayed. Then I reached into my jacket and put a folder on the table right in front of her. I told her they were divorce papers and that I had already signed my name. Because I had so much proof of what she had done, I told her she would be getting nothing from me in the split. Her hands were shaking like leaves as she looked at the papers. I looked over at Daniel, who couldn't even look me in the eye. I told him he could have her now because I was finished with both of them. I turned around, walked out the door, and didn't look back. 25 years of marriage ended in just one night, but for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. Walking away felt much easier than trying to stay in a lie.